I always like to do this like in the old
Yeah.
school days. Remember, like you never knew when it was actually going to start, like kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, good morning, Shannon. How are you doing today?
I am doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing awesome. You allowed me to hijack your presentation talking about the ERC so I could appear to still be relevant around these conversations, even though I really don't know anything except what you taught me. But today's topic is what are you going to help save? How are you saving us today? What are we talking about?
We are going to help accountants help their business owner clients withdraw an improperly filed ERC claim.
Yes. Which so the that you taught me is the withdraw and what that
Mhm.
specifically means. And obviously you're going to dive into that part of it. So before we get started, if you want to real quickly tell everybody about your Facebook group, we're streaming this to multiple places. I'm going to make sure they're tagging all the different areas, of course, but promote yourself and then feel free, please jump into your presentation.
Well, thank you for allowing me to promote myself on my own presentation. Appreciate that. So I have my Facebook group is Payroll Solutions Community for Accounting Professionals. And that is a safe place for accountants to hang out without having any payroll company sales reps in there. And if we do see anybody in there, occasionally they do slip through because there is one company that has very sneaky reps and they will occasionally slip through, but then they always make themselves known. So, but it's just a great place that we can ask payroll questions if we're having problems with the software, if we're having problems with getting, if a client has made a mistake with payroll in the past, it's a safe place for accountants to come together and let help each other help their clients.
I love it. So I've been able to, during this time, made sure we've got it shared into your group as well. Again, thank you so much for letting me try to hijack this meeting to help get the information out because I think this is extremely important. For those who wish to join us, you're absolutely welcome to, and you're welcome to even come on video and audio as we go through this stuff. I'll put the link into the live streams and to kind of help facilitate that backside of it all. So. Um, what do you think? Should we dive into your presentation?
Yeah, yeah, let's absolutely do that. Are you guys seeing my presentation?
Yep, I see it. It's perfect.
All right. So, how to withdraw an ERC claim?
Yes.
Whoops. Okay. There we go. I figured out how it works. We're good. It's like I have to relearn this every time. Like I'm Dory on Finding Nemo.
Nah. So the key word again on this is to withdraw. And I know you're going to get into this in just a moment, but first, you know, I know you, everybody else, you kind of introduce yourself, but tell us more about your background. Why are you the payroll queen?
Because I like payroll and I went around into all of the groups where accountants and other business owners hung out and answered payroll questions. But I do have a little bit of an accounting background. I have an associate's degree in accounting and a bachelor's degree in business management. I I actually started my very first payroll job in 1998, which is a long time ago. And I will tell you, I had no clue what I was doing, but I knew I liked it. And when I went back to college and got my accounting degree, I actually tutored the payroll class while I was taking it. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. I had a 3-year-old, hardly ever made it to class. So I don't, that's probably a little too much information, but it's still where we're at.
there's nothing better than real world experience. I don't remember most of my college stuff, but that's okay. So definitely the pro with the payroll. I mean, we always see different conversations and comments of like, what's the best payroll service provider to be using? I think the best answer is to reach out to Shannon because she will even do the payroll for your clients if you wish them to. So, but we can talk about that a little bit more towards the end.
Yeah, it's a little hidden service that we do. Everybody knows that we fix payroll mistakes, but I have another company where we actually run payroll. So back to the topic at hand. Key takeaways that we're going to cover today are knowing if you have to make an ERC withdrawal, how to start the ERC withdrawal process, and common issues and questions. So let's talk about it. Overview of important points. I am having issues on my side. It's
So
like I have to look at the other screen to see my presentation because as I'm advancing slides, they're only advancing on one side and not both.
I'll help read them out to you to give you some kind of context if that helps you out, of course.
Oh yeah, that would be super helpful.
It's not a voluntary disclosure. So what this is talking about is when we talk about the word withdrawal of an ERC claim, and you're going to go a little bit deeper into this in a moment. This is you saying, right, that, hey, I've submitted a ERC claim, but I'm going to withdraw this before you actually paid out any money or before I did anything with the check, excuse me. So this is different than what we've talked about more recently of a voluntarily disclosure, which is, hey, I already did all this stuff, and now I want to acknowledge I may have been sucked in one of those mills. Silas agrees. It may have been sucked in one of those mills, and there may be an issue. That's what voluntary disclosure would be. Is that correct?
Correct. And we're going to get a little bit more into why the ERC withdrawal process is different from a voluntary disclosure program. I've been expecting the voluntary disclosure program to be announced since, soon after September 14th, when the IRS issued a moratorium on processing new claims due to the insane amount of fraud. I was on an IRS webinar and they said that they think 97% of all the claims that have been issued or that have been submitted since March of this year have been fraudulent, which is a lot.
That's scary. That's really, really scary. So in the comments, either here in Zoom or on the live, if you have clients that you feel probably need to be doing this withdrawal, let us know versus maybe the disclosure. I'd love to kind of get feedback from people. I know, Silas, it's a horrible thing, man. Just keep barking about it.
I know he's very upset about this. Let's see. I in the chat, and I'm going to leave this for Matthew to put in all of the different places as this is live. I just shared a link to talk to Alex on my team about if you think your ERC claim or your client's ERC claim may not be correct. So an overview of the important rules. A business must have submitted their ERC claim on an adjusted tax return, i.e. one that ends in an X, such as a 941X, 943X, 944X. Those are the only three claims that you could submit ERC claims on. But if your ERC got submitted in the early days on an original form, then it is not available for withdrawal. The amended form must have only been used to file for ERC and has no other adjustments on it.
So can we dive a little bit deeper into that real quick? So when you're saying earlier, what years would that be that you're like most likely, or when would that have been before?
2021 is probably the most likely, that ERC was filed on an original form, because you have to remember, up until December 26, 2020, you could either do PPP or
Oh,
ERC.
okay.
And by the time that law or that executive order was put in place to make that change where you could do both, but just not on the same wages, I had already completely checked out on learning anything about ERC or
Yeah.
PPP. It's, I'm sure Matthew, the
I
PPP
like to
expert,
I like
can
to call those
say,
weekend ending changes. Weekend ending changes. I remember so many days that Hector, Jacob, and I would get. They always did some announcement on a Friday, like we had nothing
mhm,
better to do on a weekend. But so I think the intent of it, of course, because if it's older, it means the money's already gone, realistically, right? Like they've already paid that stuff out, or it's either been approved, declined, most likely for the older stuff. Is that a fair way to say it, or?
yeah, well, plus um, the withdrawal process is only available on amended returns. You can't with you can't really withdraw an entire original 941.
Good point. Very good
So,
point. Thank you. Yeah.
um, and it can't have any other adjustments on it. So, say as we were going through and filing ERC, we would spot other inconsistencies where taxable wages were over or understated, and we were making other adjustments. And sometimes the we were filing for people who also had a big payroll mess that we had to unwind first. And so we did a lot of returns that had other changes, but very few of our ERC claims were incorrect. We have found a couple that we made errors on, but we're
Well, with the
constantly work.
changes all the time, it's very
Well,
easy in the misunderstanding of some of that stuff, right? It can occur, but I know that you always stand behind your work is a key thing. Um,
and as changes have been announced and the audits have started to happen, we've actually been going through and doing an internal audit or review of every single ERC claim that we have done. And so we're using the rules now, whereas the return that we had filed was filed under different rules. So
Makes sense.
we're just completely redoing all of them to make sure that if
That's the
our
difference.
client gets audited, we know and we can stand behind and prepare our defense for why we did what we did. Or if we discover we accidentally sent a 941X to a client where they didn't qualify for that quarter, we can get ahead. And right now we still can't do anything with those, and we'll get to that in later in this presentation, why we can't do anything with that.
So I think that's kind of the difference between a lot of the different mills we keep hearing about, right? And that word mills has such a negative connotation because I mean, how many phone calls a day or text messages or everything else do we hear about all, from different companies? But I want to draw back onto one of the things you're saying is that with this, there couldn't have been other claims of any other type. So as an example, back during COVID time, I don't know if this correlates, but like with restaurants, there were specific funds you could receive for restaurants. Is that what you're talking about as well? Like if the
No,
payroll and everything else, is that different?
no, that's different. So we
Okay,
just
thank
can't,
you.
um, you can only have filled out the lines on the 941X
Okay,
for the ERC. If you made a change to taxable wages or taxable Social Security
okay,
wages or any other adjustment, or we have done where we're doing the ERC and then the client, the business owner is like, well, I paid these these people, but they were still out. They either were out sick with COVID, a family member had COVID, so they had the FFCRA or Family First
there we go.
Coronavirus Relief Act wages. We've we have done both of those claims for refund on the same return.
Okay.
And it can't be a partial withdrawal. It has to be a withdrawal of the entire amount of the claim. You can only withdraw if the claim has not yet been paid, or it has been paid, but you haven't deposited or cashed the check.
Yep.
And
that makes good sense.
a lot of times the business owners were not hanging on to the money. As soon as they got that check, they were,
A lot of
I
the
think
companies
it's,
direct deposited it into an account. So
no,
in that kind of
it's not
scenario,
directly,
right?
no, payroll can only be issued as a paper check refund. It can
Oh,
never
yeah.
be issued as a direct deposit.
Okay.
So yeah, only as far as I know, only income tax returns can be direct deposited.
Okay. So people had to get a check. This is again why you're doing this stuff, because I haven't done the ERC stuff. They had to actually get a paper check, and then they had to physically go and deposit that. And I think your next slide is going to kind of talk about how do you undo this if you're sitting and holding on to that. And then, towards the end, I want to talk, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about the moratorium aspect of it, but at the end
Yep.
of it. So
Yeah, we can definitely go over that again. Yeah, so you can only submit the withdrawal if you didn't have a paid preparer.
oh, okay. So that's
So
interesting.
that's why we can't do the withdrawal for some of our clients, and because they're it the IRS was taking so long to issue the checks. Occasionally we're catching like the one where we accidentally sent an extra 941X. We caught that. We let the business owner know not to cash that check when they got it, because it we called the IRS and found out where that was in process, and the check was already been cut and going to be in the mail. So
Mhm.
we couldn't withdraw it. And we're just waiting for the voluntary disclosure program. But in this case, because the person hasn't cashed the check, we've already filed another set of another amended return to back out the ERC. So that check is already in the mail with the form, because we have a paid preparer um,
So
on there, because
specific to
we
these
always,
ones,
yeah,
as you're talking about, so I interrupt, but specific to these ones, as we're talking about withdrawals, the key points, and you can go ahead and go to the next slide to show what parts need to be changed. This conversation is specifically for somebody who did not use a paid preparer to apply for the ERC. They have not received the funds yet, or if they did not cash it yet. So the intent of this is to be able to turn around, as we're showing here, and basically say, we're withdrawing this claim. We don't want to move forward with this. We're going to, hey, like, hold your horses. We're going to stop this whole thing right where it's at right now, is the intent of it. But it cannot be through a paid preparer, is a key thing. And the funds cannot have hit your account. You can't have cashed that stuff yet, is the keys, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the reason that they limit it to not having a paid preparer is because very rarely, if ever, have I seen a ERC claim that was done by a mill that had the paid preparer section filled out. So right from the beginning, that's always been one of the key things that I point
Interesting.
out. I'm like, we sign this as the paid preparer. And because I caught on to that trend a long time ago. So you have to write withdrawn on the left margin of the form. And this is something that only the business owner can do. It's not, and we can assist and help our clients with this, but we can't, write withdraw and send that in for them. And I know a lot of us really want to be able to help people and do that, but I mean, we can do everything except for sign it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then on the right margin, you have to write your full name, your position with the company, sign it, and date it.
Okay. And um, position wise, again, are there certain positions that are allowed to do this? And I'm asking because I'm thinking of different corporation types. So whether it's a president, an owner, LLC, like, does that matter or not really?
So anybody who could legally sign an original 941X on behalf of the company can do this.
Okay.
So if there's a lot of people who keep their payroll in-house, whether they're small or large, and whoever can legally sign the original 941 is somebody that can sign the withdrawal.
Okay.
My recommendation would be that it would be the same person who signed the
I would
original
agree.
941X that was submitted for the ERC claim, because we have had some ERC claims that got kicked back because somebody that the IRS didn't legally recognize as being eligible to sign the 941X had signed it. So
Interesting.
then it gets held up in processing until they get the return resubmitted with the correct signatory on there.
Okay.
If you did get a check, you have to write void across the front and the endorsement section on the back. That is how you always need to send back. Well, it's how you should void every check, but definitely every check that the IRS sends that you return to them, because they screw up a lot and refund people money that was still a valid liability.
So I have a
And
super
then,
important question real quick. In the
yeah,
comments, everybody in either Zoom or live when you watch this, how long do you think it will be until the federal government actually gets rid of writing checks and we do something digital instead of this stupid paper check stuff? Super important question. Let us know. Anyways, keep going. So
well, I have an opinion on that.
exactly.
Because the IRS has so
I
much old technology, it's not even funny. I'm actually pretty impressed that they're able to do anything with the technology limitations that they have.
yeah.
And I have only found this Cincinnati refund inquiry unit address in one spot, and that is on the IRS website that shows all the instructions for the ERC withdrawal process. So,
So this basically
definitely,
covers the ERC withdrawal. I believe that's the majority of that portion of it, right? It is what's your next slide? I want to make sure I'm not jumping the gun on something real quick here. I forget. Um, is so depositing. Okay, so you talked about this. If they deposited, if your client already deposited their check, then you're suggesting that they wait it out. So this goes into
yeah,
the voluntary disclosure concept
yep.
instead of the withdrawal. And it's probably a good point in time to just let people know, again, in the comments, I am looking at the chat, different places. If you have questions about any of this, feel free to ask them. We'll do our best to answer it. Shannon will do her best to answer it because I'm just here as a talking head, really, to help
Yes,
make the
but you're a
distinction between
talking head with a really cool hat.
on purpose. There we go. Um, so with the moratorium and so there's three things, I guess. We talked about withdrawal, which is an important part, obviously, that we were just covering. The next one is the voluntary disclosure. And when we're saying that, this is an assumption this is going to come up. It's an assumption that at some point the government will open up and say, hey, if you feel you were duped by a mill, you'll have the ability to do some form of voluntary disclosure to get in front of it instead of be behind it. And then there's the moratorium because of all of this stuff. And talking to you in the past with the moratorium, that doesn't mean that if you haven't done any of this stuff and you truly do qualify for the ERC, you can still submit your applications at this time, but they are not processing anything yet. And the requirements and regulations in which they will be approved are expected to change. We just don't know what that looks like. Is that a fair statement?
It is a fair statement, and we are still processing ERC claims once we approve them to proceed. I think the IRS is just really surprised at the number of people who are still filing claims, because like everybody else, I never thought that November of 2023 we'd still be processing legitimate ERC claims. I thought this would all die down around January or February of this year at the latest. But
I would agree.
we keep getting calls. We start probably 8 to 10 ERC projects every week,
Wow.
and we're down to approving only about half of the people who come to us for ERC, but we're still approving half of the people that come to us for ERC because there was so much confusion about it in the beginning, and some people are like, well, I've been, surviving, but they're like, you know what, it's COVID made everything so hard
Yeah.
that people, they need the extra help, because I've not in my lifetime ever seen a bigger example of the government picking winners and losers. And it was almost like the government had a vendetta against restaurants, like sit down restaurants, because sit down restaurants had to close, but drive-throughs were still open.
Yeah. I
I'm
mean, we
sure
could
this
have a
is
whole
probably,
conversation about the
yeah,
efficacy of how some of that stuff was done. Um, your next slide, what do we have as your next slide? Otherwise, I was going to say if we're done there, I'd love to be able to unshare so people can see you.
questions,
Perfect.
and then how
Let's
to get
keep
in contact with us.
perfect. So let's leave that one up a little bit real quick, because I wanted to ask you payroll restoration. I love the name, obviously, of the company. And to me, because I understand what we're talking about, payroll, it makes sense. But can you explain, so what does that mean? What are you restoring? What's going on there?
Oh, way too much we're fixing.
If you got
And
a problem, she'll solve it.
yeah, pretty much. So say you get a new client and you discover that something just doesn't look quite right with their payroll, but you can't really put a finger on it.
Mhm.
I have consultations that you can schedule, and that's on the
The
courses
Calendly
dot
link I
Dodd
shared.
Consulting
Okay.
Lee, or yeah, courses dot Dodd Consulting LLC.com, or you can get on, oh shoot, I just realized that's the wrong link. Let me fix this real quick. There, that's the right link. Um, I changed when we changed our business name and
Okay.
rebranded, our Calendly link changed. They both the one that I had on the screen earlier and the one that says payroll restoration both work. If you go to the one that says payroll solutions plus, though, you'll get a big alert that says this is not our current link. Click on this, schedule your
Okay.
appointment on this link.
The
But
link we shared earlier works well, so we're
yes,
good with
yep.
that. Okay.
And the link that we shared earlier is the one specifically for ERC. I have Alex on my team who is an expert. He takes all of our incoming ERC calls.
So now obviously wouldn't be appropriate, we should of course talk about the big green show coming up, QuickBooks Connect, which is not too far away, right? Are you going to be at Connect this year?
I am not. I'm
You're
not
not.
a I went last year. I really didn't like the venue. It was it was a little crowded. I hear it's going to be the same this year. And I just don't like Vegas because
So
a lot of it is I have problems with my lungs and you can smoke in casinos in Vegas.
that's a great point.
So
Um,
I
if you
had
don't
a lot
mind,
of trouble breathing.
do you mind
Yeah.
unsharing real quick so we can see you as well? So what that
Yes.
tells me, everybody, is if you have questions with payroll, everything else, you want to make sure that you set up a time, connect directly to Shannon, because you're not going to be able to hunt her down in the hallways and ask a whole bunch of questions. So grab, time with her to make sure she can help you where appropriate, of course. Um, and so again, payroll
I'm available
restoration.
on Facebook too.
Perfect. I always find that's the easiest too, right? Just
Yeah.
send me a direct message. It works well. Um, so payroll restoration, again, if anybody, before we get close to concluding here, if you've got questions on anything, please feel free to put it in the chat. We'll make sure we can answer those. But as a reminder for payroll restoration, if you've got a client that has not filed their old quarterlies or annual stuff, if they've been paying people, paper checks and trying to figure it out through Excel, and they need to untangle all of that mess, that is a problem that Shannon can handle. If there are employees in different states, because all of the remote workers, that stuff you can help get, sorted out and fixed for them, as well as, of course, the hot button stuff we're talking about right now, anything and everything ERC. Through this whole conversation, it's pretty apparent you're very transparent and ethical about your process of how this is
Yep.
done. So if you got a problem, she'll solve it.
Right.
Check out the beats as I try to revolve it. I don't know, whatever. So
Yeah. You're close. Not exactly, but I do know where you were going with that, unfortunately. But I some of the big ones that we're the restorations that we're working on right now is payroll software zeroed out everybody's or zeroed out the 941s for all quarters. And all they were supposed to do was remove the LLC owner without an S corp election from payroll. But they zeroed out all 37 employees' wages. Some
wow,
and so
that's a big deal.
we had to sift through every payroll report to figure out and compare that to the bank statement to verify what payroll really occurred and what payroll didn't. We have a startup who ran out of money about a year ago and just stopped using any software and just kept net check paying their salaried employees. So we had to get all of that reconstructed. Um, a big one that we're still seeing a lot of is headquarters in one state, but remote workers in other states, but everybody was paid as if they worked at the headquarters. So we have to unwind them from the headquarters and pay them to the correct state. And just
There's a lot of
missing,
that. Yeah.
yeah, and missing 941s, 941Xs, mismatch between what was filed on the 941s and what was reported on the W-2s.
Beautiful. Well, trying to be respectful of everybody's time. Any last things before we close it out, Shannon?
You wanted to talk a little bit about the moratorium.
Yeah.
So just the highlights for the moratorium. September 14th, the IRS said that they were going to continue to process already filed claims, but anything that came after September 14th is going to sit and not be processed. So I think if they were postmarked on the 14th, they're still going to be processed, but I don't know how many that is. They're also doing an audit of most of the claims before they're being released. They're really scrutinizing anything that's submitted without a paid preparer. And hopefully, I'm hopeful that starting January 1st or whatever their first day back in session in the new year, they're going to start processing the ERC claims that are submitted. I think enough of the mills got scared and they stopped submitting claims with the moratorium. And so we're still processing business as usual and letting everybody know that their 9 to 12 month clock is going to start in January. So if they're not to expect to see any checks until 2025 would be our estimate at the earliest that they would receive checks for claims that are submitted now.
Terry says thank you and interesting stuff. She's watching us live, so thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. And as one last final thing, you do offer a service to where you will do either like a quick overview of their ERC as well as a deep dive. Both are services you offer that people,
yes,
if they have question or concern, they can look into, of course, right?
Yeah, we're qualifying people by revenue reduction, legitimate government shutdown orders, or startup recovery based on when they start, when the business started. We're charging $500 to review to verify that the business did in fact qualify for ERC. And if somebody wants us to do a full review of the qualification and the dollar amount of the refund, we're doing that. We're charging $2,500 for that. And both of those you can purchase on Dodd Consulting, or if you're already a client of ours, you can send us a message inside of our TaxDome portal. And because a lot of times we've worked with accountants and then they're like, oh, my client went to this other place, and so they're contacting us to verify if their client did in fact qualify.
Beautiful. Shannon, thank you so much for, again, letting me join in on all of your knowledge today and helping to kind of just spread the word out there. This is obviously extremely important for all of our clients and the different companies. Hopefully you were not a victim of an ERC mill. And if you have any questions or concerns, I definitely, I say talk to Shannon. I trust her completely. So thank you so much for your time and your knowledge today.
Oh, thank you for joining me and emceeing and asking questions, because a lot of times I'm on here and I do these lives in the group and I have just a whole bunch of faceless windows that are here and nobody wants to go off of mute and actually have a conversation. So just so you guys know, that is the whole point of the lives that I do in the group, is I want to have conversations with you. I want to have interaction and answer your questions. So
Well, but thank you for joining. I mean, look, we've both been guilty of the multitasking in the past, right? So as long as they're getting a value out of it. So, thank you for joining us is key, but always happy to help answer questions. And again, in this scenario, finding the right person who has the answers.
For sure. Absolutely. And if anybody that is here now wants to go off of mute and ask questions, we still have a little bit of time. There's like 5 minutes left of the time that we allotted for this. Looks like everybody wants to stay silent. They just want to listen. But thank everybody for joining us on all of the different places and live here on Zoom. And we'll be, every time there's another ERC announcement, we'll be doing another live, and hopefully Matthew can join us again and we can restream everywhere that we can.
Love to. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as I always like to say, here's wishing you all a very successful week. Bye, everybody.